Hey everybody, welcome back to the Optometry Money Podcast, where we're helping ODs all over the country make better and better decisions around their money, their careers, and their practices. I am your host, Evon Mendrin, certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, an independent financial planning firm just for optometrists nationwide. And thank you so much for listening and joining the podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you. And today's episode, I have a very fascinating guest. And today I'm joined by Ankit Patel, who is the CEO of Classic Vision Care in Atlanta, Georgia area. And he's the founder of My Business Care Team. And the conversation today is all about a sort of different topic than we've been talking about lately. And that's the use of artificial intelligence, or AI, in optometry practices. And we talk about the different ways that Ankit sees it being able to be used to enhance the work of you and your staff in your practice. And we talk about it being used clinically. We talk about it used for administrative purposes and to enhance the patient experience. We talk about how he uses it in the hiring process and in team transparency. And he actually goes through in real time sort of a live demo of how he uses it during his hiring process to find and to vet new candidates. So this was a really interesting conversation in a technology that is getting a lot of attention and met with a lot of skepticism as well. So hopefully you'll get some really good ideas about how to use this and other technology to enhance your work and the work of your staff in your optometry practice. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, Evon, E-V-O-N, at optometrywealth.com. You can check out all of the links and information we mentioned in the show notes, which you can find by going to the education hub at my website, optometrywealth.com. And while you're there, feel free to schedule a no-commitment introductory call, and we can talk about whatever's on your mind financially, and I can show how we serve optometrists navigate the most important financial decisions in their life all over the country. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Ankit Patel. Welcome back to the Optometry Money Podcast. I'm your host, Evon Mendrin. And on today's episode, I am excited to have a fantastic guest today, Ankit Patel, who is the CEO of Classic Vision Care in Atlanta, Georgia, or at least the Atlanta area, and also the founder of My Business Care Team. So Ankit, I'm excited to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Evon.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into what I think will be an interesting conversation, to say the least, and that is the use of AI, of artificial intelligence in optometry practices, and maybe other forms of similar technology as well. But I think this is a topic that gets a lot of, maybe hype is a too strong of a word, but definitely a lot of attention. You've got all of the chat GPTs and all of the bards from Google and all these different AI tools that help to create answers to questions, that help to read documents, that help to create visuals and all sorts of stuff. But what I'm really interested in, and what I'm even personally for my own business trying to learn more about, is how to use AI in a business. And I guess today, specifically in an optometry practice, and how can we better use technology like AI to make the practice more efficient, make all of our processes more efficient, and help humans to do better human work and not have to worry so much on tasks that no humans really need to spend too much time doing. So with that really long monologue, I'm excited to dive in here today. But before we dive into that, I wanted to get a little bit of a background from you. Talk to me a little bit about your practice and what got you into eye care and working in the practice that you're in, and what led to the business that you founded.
So I guess I married into the field. My wife's an optometrist.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we got married, and we're looking around for a practice for her, and we settled here in the Atlanta, Georgia area, Marietta, Georgia, for anyone that's familiar.
Okay.
And when we did that, I helped her get it started, and then I went back to doing I had a consulting business, so I ended up back doing consulting. I was in operations, basically a COO for hire is a shorthand version of that for smaller companies like 20 million, 100 million.
I think they call that a fractional CEO.
Fractional CEO.
Right?
Yeah, that's the fancy word now. Back in my day, it wasn't like that. But yeah, fractional COO, I guess, effectively. And so when we had our first child, I looked at this business model and said, I really like this industry. It's really complicated. It's interesting. We're actually helping people, and I was like, why don't we try to expand it? And so I jumped in full time. We bought a second location, and since then we have purchased 5 practices in total and have 2 locations. So we've been
Wow.
kind of consolidating over the past, I guess 2012 was our first year, so it's 13 years now.
Wow. Interesting. And so you're probably have a pretty full plate, both of you, with the practices or just this large business that you've grown and consolidated. What eventually led you to founding another business on top of that?
So the so basically before COVID hit, right before COVID, end of 2019, we had a couple of things coming in place. So we had at that time we had I think 4 locations. We were in the process of consolidating, and we wanted to centralize the phones because the phones are just going off all over the place. So we created a centralized center for where the phones would go, and we had in-office staff. And there were these folks, friends of mine, part of a entrepreneurs group called EO, if anyone's familiar with that entrepreneurs organization. And a couple of them had businesses that had several people that were offshore VAs.
Mm.
And so I said, you know what? I think we can make a run at this and see if I can find someone really capable and competent to man or to, staff the phones. And that's how we got started. We hired our manager first, and COVID hit. And so we decided to ramp up those operations because a few of our staff just left. And so we ran an experiment saying, okay, well, instead of replacing it with in-office staff, because no one wants to be in office,
Right.
let's just see if people want to work virtually, and we can find folks from different spots around the world. And a lot of hard knocks, but we've learned a lot from that and really developed out how to really have good quality folks. And this past year, we started doing it for other offices. We got to the point now we feel like, okay, we've gotten pretty good with this. Now let's see if other folks need it. And other folks have really resonated with the idea. So it's been really helpful for a lot of our clients.
Interesting. So out of necessity, right? You saw this need in your practice during COVID, and you created a pretty good process to find and bring team members in the practice virtually, and you're now seeing a way to help other practices do the same, which I think is pretty cool. Definitely a pain point on a lot of practice owners that I'm having conversations with, and it seems like that'll be the case for a while. So let's talk about the main topic for today, and that's AI, artificial intelligence. Before we dive into different ways that can positively, I think, impact optometry practices, let's just kind of get a definition down. Like, what is AI? What is artificial intelligence? What does that mean to you? Is it the Terminator? Is it just really fancy software? Like, what is artificial intelligence?
So the easiest way, the best definition I've heard is AI is basically math plus data. So it's basically a function. You have a bunch of data, you put some math to it, and boom, there's an output. And that is really what AI is, and it seems intelligent. And now it's debatable if it actually is or isn't. But I think that there's a lot of complex math and a lot of content and data that go into some of these new models that folks have heard of, I'm sure, like OpenAI's ChatGPT, Bard, Anthropic. There's a whole bunch of them out there. Llama, Facebook's, there's a ton. And they're all basically fundamentally it's math plus data.
Got it. It's really essentially really powerful software using these complex math abilities to input data, learn from it, and create some sort of output in some way. And how do you see, so something that's, as I mentioned earlier, really interesting to me is how can we use this tool, AI, and the different tools based upon that to improve our businesses? And, I've seen that in different businesses, different industries, and in everything from note-taking, AI tools for note-taking, to phone services, to content creation. So I want to focus in on the optometry practice, so on the private practice. You and I have talked briefly about different ways. Like how do you see a tool like artificial intelligence helping an optometry practice become better?
So there's a lot of ways that can help. And so I'll break it up into 2 parts. There's the clinical aspect, and then there's pseudo-clinical. And then, well, actually I have 3 parts: pseudo-clinical, clinical, and admin. So let's talk about the clinical side first. That one, there's going to be some regulatory barriers for some of the AI, but AI in that realm can do things like image recognition. Like it can look at a photo of back of the eye and pick up diabetic retinopathy, signs of glaucoma, all these visual cues that humans are good at, but AI is getting pretty darn good, and it's been probably better than humans for a while now. Mm. So, and you're seeing this in like OCTs, like I believe the new OCTs actually have some AI built into it, right? If you look at the new Zeiss Sirius, they have like green or red. There's actually some algorithms in the back that actually determine if it's green or red based off of the data that they've collected over the years. So you're already seeing it probably in your practices clinically. Subclinically or pseudo-clinically are things like processing notes. So, hey, if you have like a patient set, can we do something with our data with clinically to figure something out? So if I input all my patient data into an AI algorithm and it says spit out, hey, what do I need to know? What am I missing? What are potential causes for these things? What are certain aspects I'm looking for? It can generate that out for you as well. So that's a little bit of your notes and information along with what the AI knows. It can pick up on patterns and trends. And then we have admin, which admin is a whole, that's why everyone is excited about ChatGPT and all these other AIs now. It can really do a lot of the admin task, sometimes better, sometimes worse, sometimes about the same. But there's a whole world there that we can focus in on. And I'm going to, I'll pause there and kind of let you guide the conversation because there's a lot we could dig into there.
Yeah. So let's kind of go back through these, I guess, one by one here. And let's talk about admin first and just the way that it can improve workflows and patient care and experience. Like tell us a little bit about how it can help on the admin side. What have you been saying?
So anywhere you have any kind of qualitative decision-making, you can now probably introduce AI in that process to make it easier. So whether you're screening candidates for interviews, whether you're trying to analyze a particular, like let's say you want to train someone, right? And they do a voice recording on a training of how to sell glasses. You can analyze that automatically. You can create learning programs for folks using AI and helping you create and reducing your work time down probably by 10x. You can also use it for responding 24/7 to people. So there's chat bots that you can implement. We use it to actually respond to reviews on Google at times. We have to make it very particular so we don't break any rules or HIPAA violations. So we're very particular about how we do that, but you can do things like that automatically. You can make it also alert you for certain things. So if you put enough data into it, it can say, oh, here's an alert, go take care of this. And so that's also a very useful way. So now you're pushing out alerts to people versus them pulling the alerts. So one example is if we get a review, it automatically alerts the management team and here's the initial response, go in and modify the response if needed.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Everything I hear in that is sort of stuff that people can do, but I don't necessarily need to do. Like it's not the best use of someone's time to check Google reviews and respond to each one, especially if you're responding similarly or the same to all these different reviews. It's not someone's best use of their time to do a lot of this stuff. So how do you get started in doing all this? Like what tools are you using? How do you get it set so that it's working appropriately and it's tested to do what you want it to do as you expect it to do it? Like where do you even start? Where's the beginning here?
So what I would say is go to one of these accounts and play with them. So start a ChatGPT account. You can do a paid account for $20 a month. Anthropic AI is another one that's free. That's pretty darn good. Bard is also free if you have a personal Google account. So you can go to bard.google.com or anthropic.ai or I think it's chat.openai.com. Those are the three main ones that are out there. ChatGPT is the big one. I would say go and play with it and ask it to do certain things and then search on how to actually prompt because how you ask the questions determines the output that you get. And there's a bunch of variables in there and without getting bogged down in too much in the details. But you can play with the variables as well and understand, okay, well, I need to limit my response to XYZ type of responses. How do I need to create the input so that I can get the right output?
Interesting. So you're sort of training it, like you're giving it the guardrails to which it can operate and do what you want it to do. And I guess you have to be almost similarly to how you would train an employee or a team member or give parameters around how and what to do. Like you might train this software to tell it, okay, this is what I want you to do and how I want it to do it. And it sounds like the more times you use it, am I correct in saying the more times you use it, the more times you add information into it, it gets a little bit better and better in its use? Is that a reasonable way to describe it?
It can. It doesn't. With these accounts, if you use the web interface, it doesn't necessarily do that. Got it. And the way they work, it's by the line of thought that you have with it. So like ChatGPT, you start a new chat and it can take all the context from the previous chats and read it, put it in here. So it does learn from previous comments in the same chat. It does use that. A lot of times they will use that data for training their future subsets of training. And so keep that in mind. So don't put anything that's private or personal or could break HIPAA in there as well. ChatGPT, if you pay for it, they have this thing called Code Interpreter, which is really good at data analysis. So you can upload like a CSV file or Excel file and say, hey, figure this out for me. And so we use that occasionally for my business care team. We'll scrub the information, take out any names and things like that. And we'll actually change the phone numbers as well, so there's no identifying information in there. And then we upload it in there. While we really want our timestamps and duration. So we clean up everything else and we say, okay, based off this data, how much do I need for staffing for this type of level of service? And it's a nice initial point to say, okay, well, this is what you need. So it cuts out a lot of time and energy in doing the analysis.
Do you feel like it can be used in that same way in a practice, but to analyze sort of the practice metrics around, I don't know if you'd want to upload financial information, but around revenue per patient, whether you have certain KPIs you want to analyze, are you able to sort of upload the data, ask it, basically train it to say, here's what I'm looking for. Can you analyze this information for me? Is that something you see sort of in the future?
You can do it today. In fact, we can run a demo with that if you wanted to see it today.
Interesting.
So and so you just upload the file with whatever data you have, but now it has to be in a CSV format or an Excel type format to upload, and it'll take that information and it'll do the analysis. You can also upload a Word document and things like that as well to ask it questions about it. So if you have like a training so Anthropic.ai is probably a little bit better for this, but if you have like several training docs, you put them in there and just ask it a question about it. What is coming down the pipeline, if you do use Google Documents, they're actually creating a project where you can say, pull the files from this folder and create a chatbot with this. So if you have a folder around opticianing, you can put all this information there. You say, okay, well, how much are my Shamir Autograph 3 lenses selling for? And if it's in there, it'll find it for you. So that's coming down the pipe, and you can use that as a training tool and as an assistance for your team so they don't accidentally make mistakes when they're checking people out.
Interesting. I wonder if this is because something I keep hearing about is this sort of disconnect between the different sources of information in an optometry practice, between the EHR, the bookkeeping and financials, and having to pull data from one place to another to really get. So I wonder if something like an AI tool like this can sort of be the go-between to allow you to gather data easily between the two and analyze it in the way you want.
So if it's a web-based EMR or EHR, you don't need AI to pull the data out. You just need someone that knows how to do web scraping using Python. Okay. And I hope no EHR person is listening to this. They'll probably be upset with me by saying that. It's a pretty easy thing to do, to be honest. There's a pre-built packages designed to do this automatically in Python. But you just got to have someone do that for you when you can automate it. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah. And then that can be used to output to a different spreadsheet to do that for you. You can go to places like Fiverr and Upwork to find people that can do this type of project for you. And so the one neat thing is, if you want to run a project like that, but I've never done it, you can use ChatGPT to say, hey, this is the person I want to hire. Give me the requirements and specs and give me a list of interview questions. Make them fill it out in a form and then have it score it too, which is what we do actually. Yeah. So, yeah.
Interesting. I don't think I have a large following of EHR reps or anything like that. So I think we're good. But even in my own work, there's a lot you can do to ask these ask these tools for things that are even more basic, like how do you make certain website adjustments? And you probably don't want to spend a whole lot of time Googling the background of how this is done. You can simply ask it for, give me the code to make this exact adjustment, and it'll allow you to do that. Hopefully maybe you even have someone working on the website so you don't have to deal with this. But even things like that, creating videos, I've seen the ability to create videos, training videos, whatever it may be, other types of content, things like that. So these tools really take a lot of that time, sometimes wasted time, off of your shoulders so you can focus again on the human stuff of working with patients, of doing the stuff that humans are really better at. Let's talk about the patient experience. Where have you seen these tools? Let's go back to that. Like, where have you really seen these tools help with making a better patient experience?
So a couple of different ways. One, when you offload the tasks from your team can be focused on the patient. So one of the reasons why we wanted to centralize and take the phones out of the office is why I wanted my team focused on the patient care and not have to worry about, oh, there's ringing in the background. Even if we have dedicated staff, you can still hear it. It can get annoying, especially if you have a smaller office. And so that's one way. It just takes off the burden there. Another way that has helped with patient care is we've actually used it in our offices and other folks with helping with soft collections. Like, hey, you have a balance. Do you just want to pay for it and take care of that now? Because we went to your insurance company. They say you had a balance. This is why you have that. And so it does the automatic calling, the talking, sends a link automatically via text. Wow. So the whole process is sort of automated, which is something that we do with my business care team and with Classic Vision Care. So that's helped a lot. And patients have good response to that. And like I said, it's also helpful in terms of what we have done with it is also helped design these are the type of people that come in, and it's like, okay, we have 4 different types of people that come in. You might have like a value buyer, a tech enthusiast, a health conscious person, and then you have fashion buyer. Mm-hmm. So each one of those people are slightly different. So, hey, if you had these people, how would you describe them? This is how I would describe them. Give me some questions I can ask them to figure out what kind of buyer they are and what would resonate with them. And what do I need to offer to them? And so it gets tighter in terms of our process, in terms of how do we create a better experience for each individual person versus doing like, oh, this is just what we do here. And no, there's nothing different.
Right. So it allows you to get into the mind of that patient before they maybe even before they walk in the door a little bit, get to know them a little bit.
We've also done one other thing, which is really cool, is create videos for the patients that we send to them. That's custom videos that we use AI for as well. So
are you using for those videos, or are you using some of the tools we've already talked about? Is there a particular video creation or editing tools, set of tools that you've seen work really well for that?
Yeah, nothing works well. It's a service that we pay for.
Okay.
And so, but it is technically AI. It's just an older form of it, and it seems to work well. So the video is not as right now. It's all language and typing is where the advances have been made. The video is a little bit further behind, but it's getting there. So in the next year, you and I might have a different conversation around that.
Right.
If it's simple enough and controlled enough, you can kind of manage it. Which is kind of what this is, but it's a little more difficult to do something that's multimodal like that, like a video and text and audio.
Got it. Interesting. So let's talk about the actual patient care, right? So the medical doctor chair, even all the testing and everything involved in that actual medical care that you're providing for the patients. And there was an interesting survey study I found on the NIH website this is from 2022, called The Optometrist Perspectives of Artificial Intelligence in Eye Care. I don't know if this is something you've ever seen, but there was about 400 respondents to the survey. What some of the main takeaways were that although half of optometrists in this study had concerns about the diagnostic accuracy of AI, the majority, in this case, was 72%, which I thought was quite high. The majority agree that AI will improve the practice of optometry. Number 2, an overwhelming majority of respondents, so 80% in this case, believe that AI should be incorporated into optometry school or residency curriculum. And number 3, the willingness to incorporate AI into practice increased after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, which I guess is not surprising due to the amount of, or the limitations around being there in person with patients. So So as you hear that, are you starting to see that the similar stats to that just in your interactions with other optometrists, other practice owners? What are you saying?
So honestly, most people in the country, they're just now hearing about it, right? They're not as deep into it. So there's a spectrum of folks who are like, yeah, AI, what is that? And folks are like, oh yeah, it's really cool. But most folks are like, it's really cool. I don't know how to use it yet. Like, how do I actually use it? Because they're doctors working full time as a doctor. The manager may or may not have experience around it. Because right now you kind of have to be a little more technical to know this. So chances are the managers haven't had that experience in the past career. So it's difficult to get it involved in there. I think people are excited about it and curious to see where it goes. Like I said, I think it will help the field. I'm curious. The question about it should be taught in school is interesting. I'm not sure what the best way to teach folks about it other than, hey, here's what it is. Here's what's coming down the pipeline. Here's what to be prepared for. So one of the things I think might be coming down the pipeline is it's going to be a lot easier to do. I mean, quite honestly, people will be more productive with it, right? You should be able to process more information, more patients, more data. And so optometrists will be more productive. It probably makes, I know maybe folks may not like this, but it probably will make remote eye exams easier. If there's legislation, things that move that direction, I kind of see that the field shifting towards that. It's starting to do that now. So you probably see more of that as well, which will hopefully alleviate some of the labor shortages, especially in rural areas. So you can provide good care. So, there's a lot of different ways it could be used. I think it's like this catch-all term, AI, but there's different apps, different ways to apply it, different AI methodologies and algorithms. So there's quite a bit there. It's not just going to be our industry either. It's going to be every industry is going to be affected by this. And it already has been a lot of places.
Yeah. And you mentioned it might make things like virtual care easier. Is it to that, or do you see it getting to that level where it will keep that quality of care? Should there be concerns about the quality of care coming from tools like that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
So I don't think that with especially with healthcare from a safety perspective, it's really hard to go away from having a human person there too, for a lot of different reasons. And I would say that I think it's going to be used as an assistance tool, not as a. Think about having an extern working for you that's helping you see exams. It maybe not fully like an extern, but it'll someone that can assist the doctor and catch things or see things. And then once the data gets protected well enough, you can just run information through it and it'll give you information ahead of time to say, ask for these things, make sure to check these things in addition to what else you're already checking. As you're typing it in, you can do, like a virtual scribe, and it types things in and makes adjustments based off of what it's hearing. So there's a lot of possibilities with that. The technology is not quite there to do the live virtual scribing, but it's a little slow right now, but it will get faster. So I do see it being an exciting tool for doctors. It's hard. It's because it is really hard to see where the market will go with this, just because there is a regulatory component to it, and there is a legislation component state by state. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point in that, or maybe not interesting, but a really good point in that, from an optometrist perspective, people by and large are going to want that human-to-human interaction. They're going to need that human-to-human interaction and guidance around the health of their eyes. And I think there's always going to be that group of people that will never see an optometrist anyway. And they're going to want to find the cheapest or least friction or whatever a technology-based solution that they feel is going to be the least expensive. But I think by and large, people are going to want and need that human interaction. This technology, in my opinion, is not going to replace that, just like it won't for a large number of professions based on human-to-human interaction and human-to-human advice. So I think, as you mentioned, is these tools should make you more productive, and they should make you better, and they should make your practice work better, leaner, probably. It will help I think it'll help on the expense side, which ultimately, since this is a show about money, like it'll help with the profitability of the practice and alleviate a lot of the concerns around rising costs and the loss of time. I think time is a cost that's not always quantified, but you definitely feel that there's there's so many things in any business where they just suck time, and they're not really a productive use of yours or any of your team members' time, but can be done really well, or at least almost as well as a human would do, at least to get to the point where it works. So from the optometrist perspective, I don't think there's too much to worry about. I think the same people that would continue to see you will continue to see you, and you'll just have a more advanced way of practicing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because doctors, I think I think you'll see it bifurcate. I think you'll see people shoot more for less and less interaction and just automating it, especially where it makes sense, right? Like developing nations, rural areas, you need that, right? You're not getting any cure to begin with, so
Right.
anything above that is a step up in its progress in treating eye disease. Where you already have saturation with doctors, with like big cities, what you'll probably see is that human touch still stays quite a bit, and it enhances the experience. So using the data to connect with patients better, I think you'll see that. Yeah.
What about in building and training and improving the team? So things like hiring, you mentioned some of this earlier, things like hiring, things like training. How does AI fit into that whole equation? Because as you had mentioned, and as I think we both mentioned earlier, like that's a pain point on the minds of practices of how do you find and how do you keep good team members? How do you get the right people in the right seats? And how do you have good training that keeps them working productively? So how does AI fit into all that?
So I could spend probably an hour talking about each one of those aspects and
Okay.
how that fits in, because there's two parts to it. There's the AI piece and what it can automate, but you have to understand what you're actually asking it to do prior to that. And so with let me start with the easier one, which is actually you have existing staff. How do you enhance them? And honestly, how do you bring transparency to what they're doing and how they're performing? And so the transparency piece, if you have the data, AI, you can structure your data and presentation so people can see it. So one example would be, so part of what we do is overnight we'll actually pull data, either through a VA or automated ways. We pull it in, and then based off that data, we do a check. And based off that check, the managers get a report for the day saying, hey, these are what's missing. You need to fix these things. This is what, these people didn't get, or whatever it might be. It's just sort of like a catch. And then they keep doing that until everything is processed properly and checked in the system. Mm-hmm. That's a great way to use it from a transparency standpoint. From a training standpoint, you can use it to create your content. So like I said, if you don't have anything proprietary or anything that you want to keep a secret, use Anthropic AI. I would recommend Anthropic, and reason being is a technical reason over ChatGPT. If it's a lot of context and a lot of information, I've used Anthropic AI versus ChatGPT. There's this thing called the context window. Just all you need to know is that you can put more information in and it can make sense of a larger data set. And so since it's already a training set, you put it in there and you say, given this information, create a 20 question quiz and give me the answers in a rubric on how to grade it. And then you could, and I'll show you here in a second, and you can put that into like a jot form, and then you could have people take it on a regular basis or whenever you feel like they're ready for advancement, and it'll score it and give them a score. And that you could automate all that versus having a person in place for that. And so we do something very similar for hiring. We do that as well for our training side, but I don't want to show you my staff score going through that, but I can show you something similar for interviews that we've had for different positions. And it's a very similar, it's pretty much the same structure. It's just done with a different position.
Yeah. If you can dive into that. Yeah. What does that look like? And for the listener, Ankit's going to share his screen. He's going to go through in real time how he uses these different AI tools in his hiring process. So you can't see it, but that's what's going to be happening behind the scenes here.
So there's a couple of different apps here that we use. We use Jotforms and Zapier or Zapier.
Zapier,
Yeah, and Jotforms is where we have our forms that we create, that we ask the questions. So I'm going to talk about my business care team, the one I founded. We were hiring for a call center manager, and there's questions that we ask of them. And what we do is we generate the questions based off of things that we absolutely have to have, as well as with questions that we ask from actually ChatGPT. So we'll go in and kind of use it as a way to make sure we get all the questions asked. So if I'm doing this here, let's say I'm hiring for an optician position. So what I can do is I can say, you are a world-class expert in hiring for private practice optometrist.
So this is you asking or
Mhm.
telling ChatGPT, like sort of laying the landscape here. This
Yeah.
is the context.
This is one of the variables. I mean, typically this will be very long. I'm not going to do the very long version
Uh
here
huh. Uh huh.
because
Uh-huh.
several of the variables I would put in here. Part of it's a secret sauce, but part of it is just practice. But
Yeah.
just know that that you want to specify every variable. You can even go by state and region if you wanted to, by language, whatever you wanted to use. But let's just say you're world class expert in hiring for private practice optometrists. We're putting it into Chat GPT. This is GPT-4. I pay for it. And I'm going to say, create a list of, and this is something that's important for interview questions, behavior-based questions to ask a potential candidate to know if they would be a good fit for the optician role. Make the questions so that a person without industry experience can answer, and we can know if they are a good fit for our office.
Okay, so you are typing in, you're giving it these prompts so that it knows exactly the type of questions to produce based on what you want out of it.
I'm going to do that first, and then it'll generate questions. Then I'll ask it to say, create a scoring system for that. So here, customer service, communication skills, it's giving me 1, 2 questions. Attention to detail and accuracy, it's giving me a couple. So here's one question it asked me on customer service and communication skills. Tell me about a situation where you had to handle a difficult customer or client. How did you approach the situation? What was the outcome? Then it has a category of attention to detail, teamwork and collaboration, adaptability and learning, problem solving and initiative, ethics and integrity, cultural fit and value alignments.
Wow.
And it's still going. Okay, good. So it gave me 7 categories, and it gave me 2 questions in each category. So now what I would say is, give me a rubric. A rubric is just fancy word for scorecard. Mm-hmm. For each question, scoring from 1 through 10, 10 being the best possible score for the question. And I ask it this because I'm going to use this data when I have people fill out the form. So I would create, 7 times 2, 14 questions in Jot form and say, hey, if you're an optician, fill this out. And now it's creating a rubric for me. So customer service and communication skill, a score from 1 to 3, provide value, provide vague or unrelated examples, struggle to articulate clear communication methods. 4 through 6 gives a basic example with some relevant details, limited demonstration of effective communication. 7 through 9, sharing strong, relevant examples, shows ability to communicate complex ideas and insights. And 10 would be demonstrate exceptional communication and empathy, provides a compelling example with strategic thinking. Mm-hmm. And so it's already created a scorecard, and it's done that for all of the 7 categories. Now what you would do is you would take this as a scorecard and then create the Jot form with everything. So here's question 1 through 14. And now what we do is, after that Jot form is there, we would say to all our candidates, hey, fill this out and make sure you do this. And once you do that, we use Zapier.
Yeah.
And we can trigger it to say, okay, whenever there's a new Jot form submitted and we want let's say the optician application done, we want to extract structured data in ChatGPT is a new feature that just recently added. And really, it's like the steps details. So you're basically telling it what you want to do. And you can see this is pretty darn long, the instructions. So without going into too much detail, what it is it tells it basically, hey, this is how I want you to score it. Here's a rubric on how to score it for each question. And here are the questions. And here's the question 1. Here's the answer that they had. And so you can put in here, well, question 1 on the Jot survey is question 1 on the rubric, and this is how you score it.
Interesting.
And then you break it. Sorry.
So for anyone who's not familiar with Zapier, it's this software tool that basically connects different programs, different softwares that don't naturally connect or integrate to each other. So you can connect Google Sheets with, some other software with your EHR or, something like that. And in this case, you're using it to connect ChatGPT with job forms and sort of connecting that information. And you can use it so that when one step happens, it will automatically do something, do the next step in another program. And when that step's done, it will automatically do the next step in a different program. So you can sort of automate this data entry and tasks and actions and different things like that, and in a way that to where you don't have to do it manually.
Yeah, it takes some time to build out. And so then I say, okay, I want you to structure the output, and I'm going to give you, this particular job had 10 questions. So I said, here's question 1 to question 10. Each one has a score. I want a sum of all scores, and then I want a reason why you gave me that score. And so then I have to define, well, what is question 1? Well, question 1 is this input from the user, and this, and use a rubric from above, and so forth and so on. At the very end, it's like, okay, what is sum of all scores? We'll add them all together from question 1 through 10, and then give me the detailed reasons why you gave scores for that. So reasons why why the scores were given for each question answered, and an overall impression for the responses from the candidate. And then I say, send an email out and then put it in Google Sheets. And we can do in version 2 and 3 of this, we actually have it more complicated, but this is just the first version. It's easier just to see this. We have it output to a Google Sheet, and you can see the candidates on the left. And you can do this for, whether you're using this for testing your team, whether it's for interviewing. Here's a list of questions, their score, their total score, and the reasons why GPT scored it the way it did. And you can see there's a wide range of responses. The first one's me, so I just made up something just to test it. But the other one's anywhere from 0, with people who did not take this seriously, to a couple people had 100 score, which I imagine these folks probably gamed it. So I don't want 100 score because they probably put it in GPT and put it out there. So there's things you got to watch out for.
Using AI against AI, huh?
Yeah, that's probably what they did, to be honest. So it's kind of interesting to see that you're not going to really see 100 score, perfect score. So, and so this gives me a great way to look at it. And if I look at some of these questions, right? So someone who got let's say a 65, this, I'm just going to read some of the summaries here. Candidate provided satisfactory responses, but they lack specifics. They were talking about hypotheticals, right? Instead of actually using past examples of experience, which is huge. You want actual experience for interviews, versus someone who scores, let's say 93, right? Provided detailed response, provided specific examples, and supported with data. There were a couple of questions, 7 and 8. They provided good examples, but not specific data. So they dinged him on those 2 questions. So it even said why it dinged him for the questions. And so if you had your internal team doing this, it'll automatically score them. You can use Zapier to even set up automatic cadences, like, hey, it's time for you need to assess your skills, or it's time for you to do this. Here's a form, take this. You can actually use this and say, okay, well, here's a new set of questions I would like to ask you, or here are the things that you have to study. So there's a lot you can do with this and automate this for your team, especially if an internal team or for hiring. For hiring, we want to watch out for, we don't want someone who we think is good to pass our interview process and turn out to be bad. So we want to filter out people who might pass the interview, but be bad at the job. That's really effectively what we're trying to do here. For your training team, you want to make sure to assess and constantly assess how they're doing, and if they know the knowledge, and if they're really learning. And it helps bring transparency to the team and knowledge, and brings it up to the surface. So I find that's very important to do, because if you want a high performing office, you kind of have to have transparency on performance.
So you've used these AI tools to create the questions that you might ask a potential hire, to create a scorecard for all of those questions that you might ask a potential hire. Once those questions are done, to gather the information and sort it and rank it, to provide reasons why those scores were given, and to send emails, all automated, all without having to have someone log into their email and do it all and sort it all and figure it all out. Which is pretty cool. It's a pretty huge time saver. And one thing I am curious to know about is that, how do you know that the questions created here are the right questions to ask? How do you know that the reasons provided here for the scores are what you would give in that same scenario if you were looking at it. Like, how do you use these tools, but also use your human experience and thinking to make sure that what it's giving you is the right output?
So don't think of AI as a replacement tool. Think of it as an enhancing tool. So if I already know what a good optician looks like in my office, I'll ask it the question and I'll modify the questions to what I want in my office.
Okay.
But if it's something new, like, hey, I need to hire an SEO person for my website, I have no clue. It's a starting point. It'll give you some insight that's pretty darn good, especially if you tell it, hey, you are a world-class SEO manager. I want you to hire someone off Upwork or one of these sites. What do I put as the description and how do I measure if they're good or not at it?
Got it. So it's the starting point. It's sort of giving you the draft or the framework, and you can look at it, take it, and adapt it as you feel is right. And then a lot of it, as you mentioned, is dependent on what you tell it or what you ask it. It's the input. It's making sure that you can be clear enough on what you want out of it so that you can ask it the right questions in the right way to get the output that makes sense. I'm thinking of someone I heard that had created that created a software company basically, and a part of what they had started with was their own internal process that was really inefficient but pretty effective. And what I had heard him describe it is that you can't start with software when building software. You have to start with a process that you've sort of dialed in and that is effective, that you can then take that to someone to turn that into some sort of software technology. And this kind of reminds me of the same thing, is that you can't just assume that this technology is going to do everything for you. You need to have some clarity around what you want out of it. What are your own expectations? What are the questions that you would want to ask it? What are the ideal outputs you would want it to create for you? And it's not until you can give it good inputs, until you're clear on what you want it to do for you, or you're clear on the type of candidates you want in this case, right? You have to be clear on the type of candidates you want, how you want them to show up to your practice, how you want them to work in your practice in order for this to work, because it's all dependent on your own inputs, right? It's all dependent on your own clarity around what you want.
And there's creative things you can do to get insight too. So let's say you have let's say you have a staff of 20 people. That's a really big practice, or a couple of practices. Yeah. But let's say you have like 5 opticians and 3 of them are really high performers. 2 of them aren't. You can say, hey, these 3 people, based off their resume and personality and all the data you have around them, they make really good opticians. Why are they so good? What should I be looking for in future opticians? So you can use it to find trends and hidden information, things like that. Again, before you upload anything to any of these AI models, make sure you scrub the information out. You don't want there's still a privacy concern. So just want to put that out there as another disclaimer again.
So let's talk about the limitations then, because there are concerns around AI, whether it's going to take people's jobs, whether it's secure or safe, or there's privacy concerns. Some of them probably well-founded, and some of them maybe just due to a lack of understanding. What are the legitimate limitations of all of these tools, and what are the legitimate concerns that you might have with artificial intelligence in optometry practices?
As of today, it is a productivity tool, not a staff replacement. Now, if you have sufficient enough scale, if you get more productive without adding extra stuff to people's plates, you don't need as much staff, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's 2 ways to look at it. Can we get more done with the same staff, or can I get more done, or the same amount done with less amount of people hours? Mm-hmm. You may not need less staff, but you may have less hours dedicated to the work. And so to be frank, it's a real thing. People have already made layoffs because of the generative nature, mostly in marketing, not necessarily in other roles, but marketing, analyzing information and text, those type of roles. These large language models, which is that's a new term we haven't used yet, but that's a type of model. ChatGPT, Bard, and Anthropic are. They're really good at those type of things with language and words. So things that aren't as like math problems are still a little difficult sometimes. But if you want to write an article, it can be pretty good at it. Now, with the flip side of that is there's going to be a lot of people putting a lot of crap out because they're going to use it, and they're not going to go to the level of detail that you actually need to go to get an enhanced product. So you're actually going to start seeing a lot of things happen in the really easy effort realm that aren't going to be as effective. You can tell it's going to be AI generated. It's not going to be as good. So the people who are going to be really getting ahead of the curve are using AI to really elevate what they're doing, whether it's with writing, whether it's with their operations, in the hiring, with the training process, all those things. You can use it to really get better at what you're currently doing, and using it as a point to fill in the gaps and elevate you. Similar to what I was saying, hey, I already know kind of what I want optician, but when I was looking through that list, oh, you know what? That's a good question. I never thought about asking about ethics or detail, or maybe detail orientation might be a normal one. But what about dealing with tough customers, right? Maybe that's not a question we normally ask. I was like, oh, that's a good point. You do have to, deal with that pushback. So it helps fill in the gaps. I apologize. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. I think, thinking about just the content side of it, like you said, there's going to be a lot of AI generated basic content. And I've even seen Google trying to figure out within their search engine, like how do you sort out what is AI generated and what's not. And there's even like voice content that's AI generated, and having to sort out, wait, is this a human talking or is this not? So it's an interesting world when you get into the content side of it and having to parse through what's real and what's not, but definitely can see the limitations there. I've seen, just in my own playing around with it, I've seen if you're looking for factual information, I've caught it in lies a few times. So be careful about looking for factual, highly technical information on especially clinical information on these AI tools, right? So that's something to watch out for too. But I definitely do think there is this such a great productivity enhancer that you can use this tool for. Do you ever feel like the privacy HIPAA concerns with uploading information like that can ever be solved, or is that just the nature of it, where it learns and takes in new data and uses it, so where that's never going to be it's something you can look forward to?
No, there's solutions already out there now. It's just it's not going to be in the public domain, right? It's the free or slightly paid version. You're not going to have HIPAA compliant versions of it there. But OpenAI does have a HIPAA compliant version. They all have HIPAA compliant versions. Yeah. Yeah, they do. You have to ask for it, and you have to be a business, usually on the back end. And there's other apps too, like full disclosure, I'm an investor in a company called Science.io that actually runs all your, if you want to send notes in, it scrubs everything and make it anonymous, and then it can send it over to OpenAI or these other places. So there's all sorts of tools out there that will be able to do that. And it already exists. So it doesn't, but you have to be intentional about it. So unless you're intentional, which I wanted to frame it that way, because if you're listening to this call, chances are you probably don't know about those things or how to do that effectively. So err on the side of safety and not send the information in. So yeah, there are ways to do it though. It's just not super easy and out there right now.
And I guess just if someone is really kind of overwhelmed with all this and doesn't really know how to use it or where even to get started, and we've talked about like all these different uses of it, does it just go back to what you said earlier? Just open one up, start playing with it, start asking it questions, start learning what it does and how it does it, and just use that experience little by little to learn more about how to use it in the practice? Like, is that basically where to get started?
What I would say is start with the problem you have. So if you have an existing problem, ask it and play with how to prompt it differently and say different things. So let's say you have a staffing shortage or a staffing issue. Ask it, hey, what are my options? I'm an optometry practice. I need you to give me solutions on how to help with staffing challenges that I'm facing. It'll be pretty generic at first, but then once you learn to refine the question, you'll get more specific responses that might be helpful and insightful to you. Mm-hmm. So you may not find anything new, but use it with a need that you have and see how it can help you there.
Yeah. And I guess look at where you're seeing a lot of people spend a lot of time on stuff that's, trivial tasks. Sending emails, gathering data, arranging numbers, stuff like that, and just say like, can technology do this for me better? Is there something that can allow me to automate some of this stuff that can take this off of someone's shoulders? Because I'm sure in every business there's a lot of that, and this stuff can help there. Any last final thoughts on all this fun stuff we've been talking about? Anything you want to leave with the listener as we sort of wrap up here?
So I pay for an account for my managers, and we run EOS. For those you don't know, Traction or Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a pretty good system to run. every weekly meeting we have, they're required to bring in one thing that they're applying AI to. So it's not about the big things, it's about the little things that you can do to start applying. So pay $20 a month, get a GPT account, and ask them to figure out one way to use it, or how are you using it in the practice, one way to make things more efficient, better for the patients, smoother, easier, error proofing, whatever it might be. Have them bring an idea and what they've tried with it. At least one thing that they've tried in the week, every week. So little things like that make a big difference.
I love that. I love that. Where can people find you, follow you, learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, LinkedIn page. I think it's Ankit Patel CBC. My Ankit at mybcat.com is probably the best email to get a hold of me. And mybcat.com is our website for my business care team. And our site's, our optometry office called Classic Vision Care. You don't see me on Classic Vision Care so much because I'm really more of the person who structures it and hires everyone. And you'll see me in the office occasionally, but on the website. But my business care team is where my focus is right now.
Got it. All right. Well, I will put all that information in the show notes. I guess if anyone has any questions on this, you can reach out to me or Ankit on any of these platforms or ways to get a hold of them that I mentioned. But Ankit, this was fun. This is somewhere where I'm trying to learn more and more for my own business, and I just see the opportunities and some of the limitations in all this, but a lot of opportunity to just make all of our businesses better and more productive. So, and provide better care for the people we serve. So I think this is fantastic. Really appreciate you coming on. And for the listener, really appreciate you listening. We will catch you on the next episode, and take care.
Want more resources to help master your money? Check out the Education Hub on Evon's website at optometrywealth.com. Evon Mendrin is a certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, a California registered investment advisor. All opinions of Evon and his guests are their own. This show is for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for specific investment, legal, tax, or other decisions. Clients of OWA may own securities mentioned on this show.